Picture this. And now you're standing in your kitchen, staring at a container of grilled chicken breast or holding a protein shake in your hand, and instead of feeling proud of what you just accomplished, you feel paralyzed by doubt. Because somewhere in the back of your mind, a voice is whispering that eating this right now might be a mistake. Maybe you've been fasting since last night. Maybe someone in a fitness forum told you that the moment you consume protein after a fast, your body shuts everything down. Your fat burning stops, your cellular repair systems go offline, and all those hours you spent disciplining yourself, pushing through hunger, ignoring your cravings, all of it instantly erased the second that first bite of chicken hits your stomach. And the worst part? You can't even find a straight answer anywhere. One expert tells you to fast longer. Another tells you to eat more protein. A third one tells you both of those people are completely wrong. The rules seem to change every single week, and meanwhile you're standing there genuinely trying to do the right thing, genuinely committed to your health, and you still don't know whether to eat the food in front of you or put it back in the refrigerator. That frustration is real, and it is completely justified, because the information that's been circulating in the fitness world for the past decade has been missing something enormous. Something that changes everything. And a brand new study published in Cell Reports has just exposed exactly what that missing piece is. But before we get to what the researchers actually found, we need to go back and understand the belief system that's been controlling the decisions of millions of people, because once you see how that old thinking was built, you'll understand exactly why it was always destined to be incomplete. For years, the mainstream understanding of metabolism was built around one central idea. Your body operates like a light switch. It is either on or it is off. There is no in-between, no gray area, no overlap. When the switch is off, meaning you haven't eaten anything for an extended period of time, your body enters what's called fasting mode. In this state, your body is supposedly doing all the good stuff. It's cleansing itself at a cellular level, repairing damaged tissue, burning through stored body fat for energy, and activating what researchers call longevity pathways, biological processes linked to a longer, healthier life. But the moment you flip that switch on by eating something, especially something high in protein, everything reverses. Fat burning stops. Cellular cleanup shuts down. Your body pivots away from repair and towards storage and growth. And according to this old logic, you simply cannot have both happening at the same time. It's biologically impossible. You have to pick a lane. You either fast and repair, or you eat and grow. Never both. Never simultaneously. That belief made sense on the surface. And for a long time, the science seemed to support it at least partially. So let's walk through the actual biology, because understanding this is the key to everything. Your body has a remarkable internal process called autophagy. The word itself comes from Greek, and it literally means self-eating, which sounds alarming but is actually one of the most sophisticated and life-preserving things your body does. When your body goes without food for a significant period of time, it doesn't just sit there waiting passively. It gets to work. It sends what you might imagine as a dedicated cellular cleanup crew through your system, searching every corner of every cell for anything that's damaged, broken, or no longer functioning properly. Old proteins that have stopped doing their job. Defective cellular components clogging up the machinery, worn-out structures that are taking up space without providing value. Your body breaks all of it down and recycles the raw materials for survival. It's an elegant, ancient, deeply intelligent system that evolution spent millions of years perfecting. Now, there's a key molecular player in this story called mtor, mechanistic target of rapamycin. Think of mtor as your body's master growth switch. When mtor activity is low, your body focuses on cleanup and repair. When mtor is high, your body focuses on building muscle tissue, structural repair, cellular growth. And the thing that drives mtor up more powerfully than almost anything else is protein, specifically an amino acid called leucine that's found in high concentrations in animal proteins and dairy. So the logical chain looked airtight. Protein raises leucine. Leucine activates mtor. mtor suppresses autophagy. Therefore, protein kills autophagy. End of story. Case closed. The conclusion felt obvious, ironclad, and scientifically bulletproof. If you want cellular cleanup benefits, you avoid protein. If you want muscle growth, you accept that cleanup stops. You can have one. You cannot have both. That logic shaped years of dietary advice. It created entire fasting protocols built around the fear of protein. It made people paranoid about what they ate after a fast. It pushed people toward undereating in a desperate attempt to maximize those cellular repair benefits everyone was talking about online. And it was missing something absolutely critical. Here is where the new research changes everything. The scientists behind this Cell Report study didn't run their experiments on isolated cells in a petri dish. They didn't study mice in a laboratory cage. They studied real human beings, people who exercised and then consumed vastly different amounts of protein in a single meal. One group consumed 25 grams of protein, which is roughly what you'd find in a standard chicken breast or a typical protein shake. The other group consumed 100 grams of protein in one sitting. 100 grams in a single meal. Now, conventional fitness wisdom had been telling us for decades that your body can only utilize around 30 grams of protein at a time. Anything beyond that magical threshold, we were told, simply goes to waste. Your body can't process it for muscle building. It either converts the excess to sugar through a process called gluconeogenesis, or it just burns it off as basic fuel. The metaphor used to explain this was a cup with a limited capacity. Once the cup is full at 30 grams, everything else just spills over the edge and disappears. Wasted, gone, useless. What the researchers actually measured was nothing short of stunning. The group that consumed 100 grams of protein didn't just match the lower protein group in terms of muscle building. They continued building muscle for hours and hours longer. The muscle protein synthesis didn't plateau at some arbitrary threshold and crash. It kept going. The body kept using that protein productively, pulling from it steadily over an extended window of time, prioritizing tissue repair and muscle construction long after a smaller meal would have already been processed and exhausted. But here's the part that shattered the old belief system completely. When the scientists measured the molecular markers of autophagy in these participants, the biological signals that tell us whether cellular cleanup is active or suppressed, they found something that challenged everything the previous logic had predicted. Consuming 100 grams of protein in a single meal did not shut down the autophagy signaling pathways. The cellular cleanup system was not switched off. It was not suppressed the way everyone expected it to be. So how is that even possible? How can you consume that much protein, activate mtor, stimulate muscle building, and still maintain autophagy at the same time? The answer lies in something most diet advice completely ignores: the fact that your body does not treat all nutrients the same way. Not even close. Carbohydrates and proteins speak to your body in entirely different languages. When you eat carbohydrates, bread, rice, pasta, potatoes, sugar, your blood glucose rises quickly and significantly. Your pancreas responds by releasing a large surge of insulin into your bloodstream. And insulin is not subtle. It doesn't whisper, it broadcasts. It sends a loud, system-wide signal to virtually every cell in your body simultaneously. Energy is here. Energy is abundant. Stop cleaning. Stop repairing. Start storing. That insulin surge acts like a master switch that shuts down autophagy across your entire body at once, not in one specific place, but everywhere, all at the same time. Protein works completely differently. When you eat protein, it activates highly specific nutrient-sensing receptors, particularly one called cestrin-2, that detect amino acids circulating in your bloodstream. Yes, protein causes a modest rise in insulin, but the key word is modest. The insulin response from protein is a fraction of what carbohydrates produce. We are talking about a quiet, targeted signal versus an overwhelming broadcast. And because that massive insulin surge never happens, the body never receives the system-wide command to shut everything down. Instead, the signal protein sends is precise and specific. Repair the tissues that need repair. Rebuild the structures that are damaged. Restore what training or time has broken down. And this is where your body does something genuinely remarkable. When you have just completed a hard training session or finished a significant fasting period, your muscle tissue is in a state of profound need. The fibers are damaged from the mechanical stress of exercise. The amino acid reserves inside the muscle cells are depleted. The muscles are, in a very real biological sense, chemically starving. They are reaching out for raw materials to begin rebuilding. So when you then consume a large dose of protein, your muscles respond like a completely dry sponge dropped into a full bucket of water. They absorb amino acids aggressively, rapidly pulling them out of circulation and into the tissue where they're needed most. Because your muscles are absorbing amino acids so efficiently and at such a high rate, the rest of your body, your liver, your fat cells, your other organs never experiences that dramatic nutrient overflow or surplus that would trigger a system-wide storage response. The amino acid levels circulating through your liver and fat tissue stay relatively low because the muscles are consuming them first and fast. And because those tissues aren't being flooded with nutrients, they continue to behave as if the body is in a nutrient-scarce state, which means they continue running their cleanup and repair processes. What you've actually created is two completely different metabolic operating systems running simultaneously in different tissues of the same body. Your muscle tissue is in full growth and recovery mode. Your non-muscle tissues are still maintaining autophagy and cellular cleanup. Two processes that were supposedly mutually exclusive are happening at the same time, in the same body, right now. This dual-state effect becomes even more powerful and more meaningful as we get older. As people age, and this becomes especially relevant from your late 30s onward, the muscles begin to develop what scientists call anabolic resistance. This is the gradual loss of muscle sensitivity to the protein signal. When you're young and metabolically responsive, even 20 to 30 grams of protein sends a clear enough message to the muscles to trigger meaningful growth and repair. But as anabolic resistance develops, that signal becomes weaker. Your muscles simply can't hear it as loudly anymore. The receptor sensitivity drops, and a meal that would have triggered a strong rebuilding response in your 20s now barely registers. In this situation, 20 grams of protein isn't enough. 30 grams isn't enough. You need a stronger, louder, more forceful signal to cut through the resistance and force the muscles to respond. And that's exactly what larger protein doses deliver. 50 grams, 70 grams, even 100 grams. They act like a hammer smashing through that resistance, delivering a signal so strong and so rich in leucine that even resistant muscle tissue has no choice but to respond and rebuild. This is why the research finding matters not just for young athletes, but especially for middle-aged and older adults who are fighting to hold on to their muscle mass and metabolic health as the decades pass. But there is a critical twist to this story, and this is the part that most discussions of this research completely leave out, because understanding it is the difference between applying this science correctly and completely misapplying it. Everything we've discussed so far, the ability to build muscle while maintaining autophagy, simultaneously has primarily been observed in people who are lean and metabolically healthy. When researchers shifted their focus to individuals who are overweight or obese, they discovered something deeply troubling and surprisingly counterintuitive. In overweight and obese individuals, the biological signals that are supposed to initiate autophagy were not low. They were actually elevated. If you looked at the gene expression data and the molecular markers on paper alone, it appeared as though these individuals' bodies were shouting for cellular cleanup. The autophagy initiation signals were active, even urgent. Their biology was essentially screaming that repair needed to happen immediately. But here's where it breaks down completely. When scientists measured what's called autophagic flux, which is the measurement that truly matters because it shows whether the cleanup process is actually completing its full cycle, the process was barely moving. The signal was there, the biological intent was there, but the execution wasn't happening. The cleanup that was being requested was not being carried out. The simplest analogy is a frozen car engine on a brutal winter morning. You turn the key. The starter motor clicks. You can hear it trying to engage. But no matter how many times you try, the engine won't start. The system is attempting to function. But something is blocking it from actually running. That something is visceral fat, the deep, dangerous fat that accumulates around your internal organs, not the fat you can pinch on the surface of your skin, but the fat buried underneath, wrapped around your liver, your intestines, your heart. Visceral fat is not simply passive, stored energy. It is metabolically active tissue that constantly releases inflammatory chemicals called cytokines into your bloodstream. These cytokines damage your mitochondria, the tiny power plants inside every cell that generate the energy needed to run biological processes. They disrupt the communication pathways between cells. They jam the very repair mechanisms that are supposed to fix the accumulating damage. And they block the autophagic machinery from completing its cycle, even when the initiation signal is strong and urgent. The result is a vicious, self-reinforcing cycle that is genuinely brutal to escape without the right strategy. Your metabolism is broken because you're carrying excess visceral fat. Your cellular repair systems can't function properly because the fat is blocking them. And because the repair systems can't function, the underlying metabolic damage keeps accumulating, making it progressively harder to change body composition over time. Things don't stay the same. Without the right intervention, they slowly get worse. But understanding this mechanism doesn't have to feel like a death sentence. In fact, knowing exactly why the system is stuck tells you precisely what needs to happen to get it unstuck. If you are currently overweight or carrying significant belly fat, your most important priority right now is not optimizing your fasting window down to the minute. It is not stressing over whether a small amount of protein is slightly disrupting your autophagy. Your singular most important biological mission is reducing the visceral fat that is physically blocking your cellular repair systems from functioning. Everything else is secondary to that, and here is where most conventional fasting advice leads people in exactly the wrong direction. The instinct when trying to activate cellular cleanup and lose fat is to eat less, particularly less protein, in the hope that restriction will trigger more autophagy. But given what we now understand about how visceral fat blocks the autophagic machinery, reducing protein is actually one of the worst things you can do in this situation. Protein has a property called the thermic effect of food that makes it uniquely powerful as a fat loss tool. When your body digests and processes protein, it has to spend a significant amount of energy just to break it down. Approximately 30% of the calories contained in protein are burned off during the digestive process itself. That means if you consume 1,000 calories worth of protein, your body only effectively retains around 700 of those calories. The remaining 300 are burned simply handling the digestion. Compare that to eating 1,000 calories of fat or refined carbohydrates, where almost all of it gets stored with very little metabolic expenditure required. This means that simply by increasing your protein intake, you automatically raise your metabolic rate, burn more calories throughout the day without doing anything additional, preserve the muscle tissue that keeps your metabolism running efficiently, and begin shrinking the visceral fat that is blocking your autophagy system from working. And the timing of when you consume that protein specifically, when breaking a fasting period, matters more than most people realize. For years, the standard advice around breaking a fast was to ease back into eating gently. Start with bone broth. Have a little healthy fat. Something light and easy that wouldn't shock your digestive system or spike your insulin. The idea was to stay close to the fasted state as long as possible and transition into eating gradually to preserve the cellular benefits. The emerging data tells a completely different story. If your goal is protecting muscle mass, accelerating fat loss, and keeping cellular repair processes running in the tissues that need them most, you should be breaking your fast with a substantial, high-quality lean protein meal. Foods like chicken breast, egg whites, white fish, Greek yogurt, or whey protein isolate. The reason lean protein specifically matters is that it delivers the amino acids your muscles are desperately craving after a fasted period without simultaneously flooding your system with excess calories, dietary fat, or sugar that would trigger a system-wide energy storage response. You feed the tissue that needs rebuilding without sending the global shutdown signal that halts repair everywhere else. For those who are already lean and metabolically healthy, this discovery is a genuine biological superpower. You can train hard, extend your fast for 16 to 18 hours, and then sit down to a large, high-protein meal without destroying the longevity and cellular health benefits you've been working toward. You become what the science might call a metabolic hybrid, a body capable of repairing, building, and cleaning simultaneously, allocating resources precisely where they're needed moment to moment. That is not a compromised system, that is an optimized one. For those carrying excess weight and struggling to break through the cycle of metabolic dysfunction, the liberation this research offers is significant. You do not need to fast for extreme lengths of time. You do not need to live in fear of food. You do not need to obsess over every gram of protein wondering if it's quietly destroying your cellular health. By consuming around 100 grams of high-quality lean protein after a fasting period or following exercise, you trigger powerful satiety hormones, including GLP-1 and peptide YY naturally and without pharmaceutical intervention. These are the same hormonal systems that expensive prescription weight loss medications are engineered to artificially activate. You are activating them through strategic food choices. These hormones reduce cravings, stabilize appetite, and prevent the binge-eating episodes that tend to derail people who have been restricting too aggressively for too long. And as the visceral fat slowly begins to reduce, not because you are starving yourself, but because you are eating strategically and intelligently, something remarkable begins to happen inside your body. The cellular machinery that was blocked and jammed begins to clear. The autophagic flux that was stalled starts moving. Again, the frozen engine that kept refusing to start finally catches and turns over. Your biology begins repairing itself the way it was designed to do across millions of years of evolutionary refinement. This is what genuine metabolic recovery looks like. Not dramatic, not overnight, but steady, consistent, and cumulative week after week, building on itself until you reach the tipping point where your biology stops working against you and starts working with you. The science is telling us something profoundly liberating. The human body is not fragile. It is not easily broken by a meal. It is not a machine with a rigid, binary operating mode that collapses the moment you deviate from a perfect protocol. It is remarkably intelligent, deeply adaptable, and extraordinarily resilient when you understand how to work with its design rather than against it. You do not have to choose between looking strong and healthy today and living a long, disease-resistant life tomorrow. With the right protein strategy, grounded in actual research rather than outdated myths, you can pursue both at exactly the same time. So the next time you stand in your kitchen after a workout or at the end of a fasting window, holding that chicken breast or that protein shake, do not let the doubt creep in. Do not second-guess yourself because of advice that was always built on an incomplete picture. Your body is smarter than the oversimplified rules you were handed. Feed it what it actually needs. Train it with intention and consistency. And trust the biology that evolution spent millions of years building because it was designed to do exactly what you're asking it to do. Build muscle, burn fat, repair and renew, all at once. And with the right approach, it absolutely will.